All right. Yeah, I think we're good. So, welcome to this workshop. I'm so glad to have you here. And today we're going to be talking about how to start a cottage food business the right way. Unfortunately, a lot of the people who start a cottage food business are first time entrepreneurs and often make a lot of mistakes. So, we're going to be talking about some of those mistakes today, and I want to help guide you into the right way to start a cottage food business, or at least the way I feel is the best way right now if I was starting over today. I started my first business over 15 years ago, and I had no idea what I was doing at that time. So, I definitely understand what it can feel like to feel like you don't really know where to go, and you might be afraid of failing. So we're going to talk about that. I'm seeing a lot of hellos coming in from all over the country. Awesome. Um, so let me just jump right in. Let's see. Got to get my slides going here. So first of all, I would like to know if you have a cottage food business already, or are you just thinking about starting a cottage food business? So where are you in your journey? Let me know in the comments. I'll just give a brief introduction about myself. I think you know right now, I am David Crable. I am the founder of Forger, and Forger has changed a lot over the last 14 years since I started it. But one thing that hasn't changed is that it's always been committed to the cottage food industry. So initially, 14 years ago, it was an online marketplace for homemade food. Now it's more of an informational resource. So I educate people about the laws around the country. And then I also have a podcast where I share cottage food stories from people that have started from home. And then I also have my own food business, a fudge business that is very part-time. I just opened it up during the holidays, but I have that cottage food business of my own. And then I'm a stay-at-home dad. I live in Auburn, California, and I have two kids, 4 and 6 years old, and I have 2 dogs. And you probably see one of them back behind me. This is our dog that never leaves our side. So if we're going in the car somewhere, he wants to come in the car with us. And if I didn't have him in here right now, then he'd be scratching at the door trying to get in. So that's Bolt. We also have a yellow lab named Mooney. All right, so probably not going to get through all the comments in here. So I do recognize Donna in here. Hi, Donna. She's been doing it for a couple years. All right, let's see, Susan, and we'll go back to the top here. All right, yes. LA is from South Dakota, just getting started. Awesome. Claudia would like to start. Pamela says she's ready to launch. Awesome. Yeah, we're going to be talking a lot about launching. Still thinking about it, Karen. Hopefully get you off the fence today. Monica says, not yet. Bit scary to start, and absolutely, it can feel very scary. And so hopefully this workshop will help alleviate some of those fears. All right, and then, okay, Linda's thinking about it and not sure. So yeah, this is a workshop really designed for beginners, people who are thinking about starting, but it also can be used if you already have a cottage food business as a really good way to launch or relaunch another aspect of your business or a new idea. And as I said, we're going to be talking about launching today. And a lot of time, so what we don't want to do when we are launching a cottage food business is launching it like a space probe. I kind of am into space a little bit, and this is a picture of Voyager 1. It is the furthest human-made object from Earth. I think it's over 15 billion miles away right now. And for this project, obviously, the people and the engineers had to spend years planning and preparing, and because once you launch the space probe and send it on its mission, it's not coming back. You can't change anything mechanically or add anything to it. So that's kind of like how we don't want to start a food business, because even though it seems like it's an extreme example, A lot of first-time entrepreneurs start their cottage food businesses this way. They'll plan for months or even years and try to have all their things set up before they announce their business to the world. And we don't want to do that with a cottage food business. In fact, that can handicap you before you even get off the ground. So we want to start this more like a new recipe. All right. So like when you try a new recipe, it probably is not going to be perfect the first time. And I picked a picture of an apple pie because you may not know, when the apple pie was first invented in England, the crust that they used was basically inedible. And, yet it was still good enough, apparently, to kept getting made over and over again and evolve into what we now know as apple pie today, with this delicious, flaky, buttery crust. So that's a good example. And I think you probably have your own examples. Like, I know when I try a recipe, usually it's not perfect the first time, but I still use it. I move forward with it. We have it for dinner. And then the next time I make it, I try it again. And even with my fudge recipe, which is what I sell, I'm still making tweaks to it. And I'm sure you can relate. All right. So that's kind of how we want to think about our business as we move forward. So the plan that we're going to follow today is, we're going to start by talking about the idea, or the product idea that you might have to start your business. Then I'm going to talk about some distractions or mistakes that we want to avoid. And then we're going to go into a 3-stage launch process. So we're going to talk about a pre-launch, and then doing a launch, and then the post-launch. And then at the end, I'll be staying around for Q&A. And definitely stick around to the end, because I do have a special offer that is only available if you are watching here live right now. So keep your eye open for that at the end. But first, I want to know a little bit more about you. Do you already know what you want to sell? And or are you just not quite sure? So we're jumping into the idea phase here, the product idea. So let me know in the comments if you know what you want to sell. When I think about product ideas, I like to think about 3 questions. So these are 3 questions you can think about when you're considering an idea for a cottage food business. The first question I'd ask is, are people asking for it? So this can be a very good indicator that it's a good idea. So for example, if you make a birthday cake for your daughter's birthday and somebody comes and they see it and they go, wow, could you make one for my daughter's birthday? That's usually a pretty good sign that it's going to be a fairly promising product idea. All right. So are people asking for it? Also, it can happen with the "you should make this" comment, right? People come to an event or to your house and they try something and they go, wow, this is so good. You should sell this. I said, you should make this. I meant you should sell this. And so that's also a very good sign. Now, I would not say that that's validation. That's not, any guarantee that this is going to be a really promising business, but it's at least a very good sign that it could be a good product to sell. All right. So that's the first question. The second question will be, are other people selling it in your area? And a lot of times, first-time entrepreneurs make the mistake of thinking that if something is already being sold in their area, then it's not a good business idea. And actually, the exact opposite is true. It's very unintuitive. But if you're trying to bring a brand new idea that is very unlike anything else being sold in your area, that's actually a big red flag for a product idea. This often happens when somebody's coming from another culture or maybe even from another country, and they're trying to introduce their culture, their product into the new area because they know how popular and great, they have great memories from it from where they came from. All right. And I'm not saying that can't work at all, but it's generally harder to start a business when you have a product idea like that. And typically, again, generally speaking, there's always exceptions, but typically when we have a product like that tends to work, it's when the product is similar to something that people are already buying in the area, and it's just somewhat different and unique and special. All right. So Conversely, if what you want to sell is being sold in your area, that's actually a really good sign that it could be a good business to pursue, because we already know that there is a business model around it that's working for other people in your area, and probably not all of the demand is being met for that type of product. So that's actually a very good sign. So that's the second question, is, are other people selling it? All right. And then the third question would be, is it legal to sell? All right. And, I wouldn't say that it's impossible to start a successful business with an illegal product. But generally speaking, I do recommend that people start with a product that's legal under their cottage food law. So the way you can check this out is by going to forager.com. Let me pull it up here. There it is. Yep. And so if you go to forager.com, you're going to be taken to the law page. Now, just so you know, Forager is spelled Forrager. And on here is the map, and it shows all the states. I've ranked them by color and whether I think they're good or not as good. And then you can either click on your state or you can scroll down. I personally live in California, so if I clicked on California, I could come here to California, and then I could click on the allowed food section. And here's a list of the foods that are allowed under California's cottage food law, right? So you can read through these. You can also look down here and see if there's a prohibited section or things that you can't sell. And then also there might be some extra notes at the bottom that clarify more about what's allowed in California. In California, they have a very specific list. It's right here, the approved foods list. And so if it's on that list, you can sell it. If it's not on that list, you can't. All right, so that gives you a sense for whether or not something is legal or not. And this can often be a problem when people, hold on a second, let me come back here. Yeah, this can often be a problem when what people want to sell is not allowed under their state's law. And generally speaking, when that happens, I recommend that people find something that is allowed and just maybe slightly different. And then just always keep that, that stellar recipe in your back pocket for the future. So like oftentimes this happens if somebody has a great cheesecake, for example, right? And then their state doesn't allow perishable products, so they can't sell their cheesecake. I would recommend selling, some other kind of cake or pastry first that is allowed, and then learn the business strategies around that. So a great product is great, but that's not what makes a business. What makes a business is you and the marketing and all the stuff that goes into actually getting a customer base and starting a business. So I would say start with something legal. Personally, that would be one that's personally what I would recommend, but that's the third question I would recommend you consider. So let's look at what people are saying here. Yeah, we got a lot of comments. Awesome. All right. Anyone saying what they... Oh, frozen sandwiches. Enos, that's going to be probably not legal. It depends on your state. There are a lot of more states now that are allowing perishable foods. All right. Don't know. Mini sweets. All right. Shortbread cookies. Macarons. All right. Custom cakes. Macaroons. All right. Sourdough. Awesome. All right. Okay, so that kind of walks you through what I like to think of when we think about an idea. But that is not any way to validate a product. So we're going to be talking about validation, how you can actually kind of assure yourself that this is going to be likely to succeed. So first of all, before we get into the launch process, let's talk about some distractions, or what I think of as distractions. And all the things listed here are probably things that you think about when you think about starting a business, or any business really. And yeah, we think about a lot of these things. We need to get licensing or permits. We need to have a business name. need to have business cards, need to have a social media presence, have a business page on our social media accounts. Need to look into equipment, so you can scale properly and make the right amount of product. You need to figure out your pricing before you get started. You need to, maybe even have an accountant sometimes. I've seen that before. You need to have a website, you have to have an online home base. You got to have a logo. You have to have your branding set up. You need to have packaging and labeling. Email marketing, you probably have heard about email marketing, you have to have that. Then event displays, tent setup, banners, having great photos of your products, and getting business insurance, and setting up an LLC. And then the last one here that I put down as a distraction is perfection. And I think that's probably the most important one. We see this a lot in recipes. You have to perfect your recipes before you get started. And I'm here to tell you that all of these things are not necessary to start a cottage food business. And I'd even go so far as to say that all of these things, if you do focus on them, will distract you from setting up a successful business and potentially even handicap your business from the start. All right. And you might be thinking, well, if I don't focus on any of these things, then what's left? And what's left is your product. You only need to have a product to start a business. And you might be thinking, well, how? And that's what we're going to talk about right now, is how to launch a product without doing any of that other business stuff. And I should say, all these distractions here, I'm not saying they're not important, okay? They're important at a certain point, but they are distractions when you're getting started, all right? And they will slow you down. All right, so the first thing we're going to do when launching a business is what I call the pre-launch process, all right? This is going to be an event. It's going to be a private and free event, and it is going to be for your own personal connections, so family and friends, neighbors, etc., coworkers, so people ideally probably at your home, but it doesn't have to be at your home. And then it's going to have a very limited menu. And then it will be completely legal to do, because you're not going to be trying to sell anything. It's going to be free. You're trying to showcase your products, and there's nothing illegal about that. So you don't need to have anything set up in order to host an event like this to launch your business. So the first step that I would take with the pre-launch is to set the date of the pre-launch. I would set the date before I did anything else, because the date gives you a deadline, and the deadline sets the wheels in motion. And you can figure out everything else you need to figure out between when you set the date and when that date actually comes. All right, so maybe you're saying it's going to be on a Friday night from 6 to 8 p.m., right? So that's the event, the date you're going to set. All right. And then you're going to tell everyone You're going to tell all those personal connections, your family, your friends, your coworkers, your church members. Tell everyone and invite them to come to the event. Again, this is a private event. It's invite only, so you're not asking people to ask other people. And then I would recommend up to 3 menu items. You want to keep this menu very simple, so pick up to 3 menu items to showcase at this event. And with certain kinds of businesses, you might need to add a couple things on to make it a full event. Like I sell fudge, right? So I guess I could have a fudge party, but it'd probably be better to flush that out with maybe some fruit as well, or maybe hors d'oeuvres, and then, have the fudge be part of it. So, you can figure out what works best for you, but we're wanting to have this event showcase your products up to 3. And then if you have time, and only if you have time, I'd put a little bit of time into packaging. At that point, simple packaging, go to the dollar store, find some simple packaging ideas, and create some packaged products. We're not preparing for a market or anything like that. We're just creating a few packaged products that people can see what it would be like if they bought something from your business. Okay. And we're not worrying about pricing at this point. Okay, that is definitely not something that you need to worry about yet. All right. So that's kind of how I'd set it up. And then of course you're going to host the event. And then when people come, definitely get their contact info, probably their email address or maybe their phone number. If you don't already have it, you'll probably already have a lot of these guest contact info. And at this point, I'd be asking them about pricing. So they're coming to the event, they're trying your products, they're probably giving feedback on your products. Hopefully you have maybe some products or packaged products there for them to look at. And then you can just ask them what they would be willing to pay for something. And then you're going to want to follow up with people after the event. You're going to want to get their feedback and, see what they thought. All right. And so what are the benefits of doing an event like this for the pre-launch? Well, for one, you're going to get a lot of feedback. You're going to get feedback about your product. You're going to get feedback about pricing. And you're also going to start building a customer base. You're kind of letting the world know you're starting this business, or at least letting your inner circle know that you're starting the business. So you're starting to build that customer base. And then you also can start testing systems in a very simple way, right? You're going to be testing your production systems as you prepare for the event. You're going to maybe be testing some packaging and maybe even adding some payment systems if you have time, like a payment processor. So you're going to start to kind of refine your systems at this point. And then also there is a potential for sales. So when you have those packaged products that people are looking at, people literally might say, can I buy this from you right now, right? And it's not something that I would seek or advertise, but if people ask, then I would ask them, well, what would you pay for it? And then whatever they say, I would sell it to them for that. The purpose of this event is not to make money, all right? But if people are asking to buy your products, I would make that sale. And then, again, it's just another way that you can kind of test things. And very importantly, this starts word of mouth marketing for your business. Now, one thing some people don't realize that word of mouth marketing does not happen automatically. All right. It happens when people have an amazing experience. And so that's what we're doing here is we're creating an event or an experience that people can talk to other people about and share your business and your new business and can help get them excited. All right. So here are some pre-launch signals. These are signals to see if this is working and if you should move forward. So attendance would be a big one, right? Did people actually come and how many? And then enthusiasm. You can get a sense for how enthusiastic people are about your business and about the event. You will hopefully be generating quite a lot of ideas from this, right? So people, once they know you're starting a business and you're bringing them into the event and you're wanting their feedback, they are going to come up with ideas. They might have ideas about your products. They might have ideas about where you can sell. They might have ideas about how you can package. And all of these ideas will be invaluable to helping shape your business. And a lot of them will be things you never probably could have thought about on your own. And some of the people even have connections that like open up doors that you never would have known. All right. And then another signal we're looking for is criticism. Now, criticism isn't bad. Criticism tells you that people really care about your business and they want it to succeed. But if there's a lot of criticism or a lot of pessimism, that would be a not so great signal. And maybe you want to do another pre-launch. And then food waste is a really easy one to check. So look in the garbage can after the event. Did people take a bite out of this product and then throw the rest of it away? That's generally not a very good sign. All right, it'll happen like no matter what. Generally that happens to some degree. But if it's happening a lot, that's a pretty good sign that even if people aren't telling you to your face that they didn't like the product, they told you with their actions. And then finally, of course, sales. If you're getting sales from this event, people are actually asking to buy your product from you, then that's a very good sign, generally speaking. All right, so if you've made it through the pre-launch phase, then we're ready to move into launching. All right. And again, we're trying to create amazing experiences to start and boost this business. So again, the launch is going to be very similar, but this time it's going to be a public event. All right. It's not going to be private, and it is not going to be free. All right. So people are going to be coming to this event to buy products from you. Probably again at your home, but again, doesn't have to be. And again, it'll have a limited menu. We're keeping it simple. And one really unique component about the launch is it's going to have a very limited time window. So you're going to say, hey, this is going to be open from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on a Saturday. All right. So come for that very limited time. That's when I'm launching my business. All right. So that's a very important component about the launch process. And I will just cover this because you might be thinking, well, this is not legal. Like if I don't have my permits or licensing, and in some states, you're right, it would not be legal. In some states, it actually would. There's a lot of states now, food freedom states, that allow you to start selling without doing anything. Yes, this might not be legal in your state to be having a public event, hosting a public event, and selling products. My personal opinion about that, though, is at this stage, you're trying to validate your products. And as you go through the validation process, your business could change a lot. Your products could change a lot. And so I personally don't think it's that big of a deal, and actually kind of think it's important not to worry about all the permitting, because some states require you to submit recipes when you're getting your permits and jump through all these hoops. So I don't think it's that big of a deal to have a one-time event that is not completely legal. Almost certainly no one at the event is going to care, and it'll just help keep you moving, help keep the ball rolling. And we'll talk about the licensing in just a second. So I'm not too worried about this component, but I did want to touch on it. All right. So with the launch, I would definitely, again, set the launch date first, set a deadline, and then figure it out as you go. All right. And then tell people that they can invite others. Definitely invite everyone who is invited to the pre-launch, and then also let people invite other people to it. This would also be a good time to start dabbling in social media. You could announce it at least on a personal social media page if you have one. If you're active on social media, this would be a good place to do that. You might even consider starting a social media, like a Facebook business page or something like that, as you're launching. So announcing on social media can be a good idea at this point. And then we're going to keep the menu very simple. Again, probably up to 3 items. It could be maybe up to 5, but you don't want to overcomplicate things right now. You want to have just some of your best products available at this to sell. And this is a great opportunity to refine packaging. If you did some packaging in the first pre-launch phase, then here you can kind of refine it based on the ideas you got from people in the pre-launch, right? So we're refining our packaging, tweaking it. And then at this point, if you have time, it'd be good to set up a payment processor. I personally like to use Square. I have a tutorial about how to set up Square, but any payment processor would work. But accepting credit cards isn't necessarily a bad idea at this point. But if you don't have that, then it's generally easy you'll find a lot of people will want to pay with cash or check anyway, just because they know that credit cards have fees, and then also people maybe want to pay with Venmo. So that's fine too if you don't get to the payment processor step. All right. So you're going to host the event, and then you are going to offer samples at this event. Samples are really important because there's this concept called reciprocity, where if you give something, then people want to return it. So you definitely want to offer samples. You want to get them to taste your product and try it before buying. You, again, want to get people's contact info, but if you only get customers' contact info, that's okay. You don't have to necessarily get everyone's contact info at this point. You are going to request reviews from customers or people who come. So that's a really unique feature about this stage, is that you can start to get online reviews from Facebook, on Facebook page or Google or whatever. And then once the event is done, it's really important to then open your products up to pre-order. right? So let's say, like our example, we had our business or our event, our launch event. It went from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on a Saturday. All right. And so at 2 p.m., you could announce on social media or email to your list or whatever that you said if you couldn't make it, it was like a great event, but if you couldn't make it, I'm opening up pre-orders to continue the sale, and it's going to only last for like 24 hours or something. You want that to definitely, most would be like 2 days, but ideally like a day, you would be opening up pre-orders. So you're letting people who weren't able to make it in person still buy your products, and also take advantage of your special offer. So you're going to want to have a launch offer. Let's talk about that. A very important part of this whole process is you are celebrating the founding members of your business, right? The people who are coming right in the beginning, you want them to be a part of your journey, and you want them to feel like they're part of your journey. So we're celebrating founding members, and you want to reward them. So you definitely want to have some kind of special offer. That could be like a free gift that they get with their orders. It could be discounted pricing. There's honestly a lot of different things you could do to make people feel really special at this event. And then you're going to want to extend that offer to people who pre-order. All right. So that launch offer will help encourage sales because it adds an element of scarcity. Scarcity is a concept where if they're going to lose something, then they're more likely to buy now, right? So if you have discounted pricing, if people, usually would have to buy something for $10, but at this event they could buy it for $5, then it'll encourage them to make a decision and decide if they want to buy now. All right. And this is also not an event where we're really that concerned about making money. We can price things based on the feedback we've already gotten and a best guess, but I don't want you to get too hung up on the pricing at this point. All right. And again, a really important aspect of this is that people know your business is new. They are not expecting it to be perfect, and they feel special and included, that they are being brought in and part of this new journey. All right, let me just make sure we've got the chat underway here. Okay, so, all right, so thank you, Inez. We'll cover some of these Q&As at the end. All right, so some of the benefits of a launch. One of the biggest benefits is that it builds buzz with a sense of urgency, and you are going to get even more feedback during this launch. Also, you're going to be refining your systems even more. You're going to be refining your production systems, your products, your maybe pricing. And that's a very important thing because we're kind of just learning as we go, right? We're not doing the space probe thing. We're just doing a recipe. We're tweaking it over time. This is also going to give you a revenue boost, right? So it's not a free event. People are paying. So that can help boost your revenue and help keep you moving. And then validation is the most important feature of the launch. It's going to help validate your business and give you a really good sense if you should be moving forward with this business. All right, so the launch signals is this working? Again, attendance, how many people attended would be a very big signal. And then returning customers is maybe even a more important signal. So did people come to the pre-launch and then come back to the launch? Did people from the pre-launch tell people to come to your launch, right? So these returning customers are what a business is founded on. You can maybe make an initial sale, but it's those repeat sales that are what makes a business. And then of course, sales at your launch are going to be a big sign. Are people actually buying your products? And then reviews. You're going to be asking people to leave a review online. Are they leaving a review? They're going to be more likely to leave a review because they know it's new. They know the review is important. And are they leaving a review? And then what are they saying about your business? It's pretty typical at this point that anyone who does leave a review will leave a good review. But you obviously want to be making sure that they are good reviews and there's nothing to be worried about there. And then also stories. it doesn't always happen, but ideally you might be able to pull stories out of this process. All right. So let's say you sell gluten-free products, right? And then someone comes with their kid who has a gluten sensitivity and they go, wow, this is so amazing, right? That's like a story that you can then share in your marketing that help boost your business and help encourage future sales. So the more you can capture stories like that, the more you can tell stories in your business, the better. And then confidence. Hopefully by this point, you've run 2 events, you've talked to a lot of people, you've made some sales, and hopefully by this point, you have a lot more confidence about how to get your business moving forward. And it eliminates a lot of that fear that holds us back from starting. All right, now, not everything goes according to plan, right? So troubleshooting. Again, I'm going to focus on this slide where we talked about the distractions. All these things that people typically associate with a business, almost never are any of these things the problem with a business being successful or not in the beginning. Okay, almost never. Occasionally, maybe pricing sometimes, but almost never are these things a problem. Almost always the problem is either people or products. Almost always, that's a problem. So let's troubleshoot people. Now, usually there's only one problem with people, and that's that not enough people came. Maybe even no people came sometimes. So there's a few things we can do to try to fix this. One would be to try another location. If you tried hosting it at your home, but you live 15 minutes outside the city, maybe try hosting it at an event venue and partnering with someone in the city, maybe even someone at someone else's home. You could also try a giveaway launch at this point. That is a strategy that I talk about in episode 1 of the Forager podcast. It's also something I talk about in lesson 7 of my mini course. You can get the mini course by going to cottagefoodcourse.com. The giveaway launch is a launch process that doesn't involve that in-person element. All right, so that might work in this case. And then you also, if you're not getting enough people to come, you just might not have enough connections, or there's something wrong with having enough people. So getting in front of more people is important at this point. So at that point, I might recommend taking the step of trying to get into a market, trying to get into an event. And then of course, you're going to be getting in front of people. But even if that's the case, you've at least gone through a couple formative launch stages that make it easier for you to jump into that event. All right. So those are some ideas about how to troubleshoot. But if things are working, I need to talk about products too. So with product problems, there's more indicators here. There might be not enough sales, not enough people are buying. Also wasted products. We talked about that. Are people throwing most of it in the trash? And then negative feedback. Again, constructive feedback isn't a problem, but if there's a lot of negativity surrounding your products, then that's definitely not a good sign. And then the most important indicator is, are there enough repeat customers buying again? All right. And so generally speaking, the best solution for this is to communicate with the people who came and reach out to them. You have their contact info and say, hey, be honest, I'm not selling enough. Do you have any ideas for how I could improve? And you will probably generate some pretty honest feedback at that point about what's not working about your products. All right. So remember, your founding customers will shape your business. You are not the hero of your business. Your customers are. And the more that they can feel that, the more that they can be part of that journey, the more likely your business will be successful. All right, so then we move into the post-launch phase. All right, if things are looking good and you're ready to move forward, that's the point which I would look into licensing, getting your cottage food permit. Again, if your state even requires it, a lot don't now. So start that process, but don't let it hold you back. A lot of people will wait for sometimes even months before they're permit is approved, as long as you've gotten the ball rolling, you're trying to do the right thing, I would keep moving with your business. And then you're definitely going to want to be considering the ideas that customers brought to you. You know, like we said, some customers will be able to open doors for you that you never could have opened on your own. And there may be some things that they propose that just wouldn't have been possible if you tried to formulate your business behind closed doors. So definitely consider different ideas and help them shape your business. And then at that point, I would start doing one of these to fully launch your business. I would either consider a pre-order model, you know, maybe pre-ordering to individuals or pre-ordering to businesses, you know, so you're making those orders and fulfilling custom orders. Or I would look into markets or events like a farmer's market or local craft fairs. Or I would look into a wholesale model. That's less common, but in your case, it might be a good next step, especially if you say already know somebody who wants to put your products in their stores. So, and again, some states don't even allow wholesale at the cottage food level. So I'd start doing one of those things to then take your business to the next step. All right, so that's my presentation today, and I'd be interested to know what was the most valuable thing that you learned today. Let me just check the comments again, make sure everything's looking good. Okay. Yeah, so let me know what was the most valuable thing you learned today. And I have to say, I have this special offer in just a moment, and we'll be doing Q&A at the end. But would you like to learn more from me? If so, I invite you to join me in my Cottage Food Pro membership. It is a new membership. Again, this is not the special offer, but it is a new membership that I started this year, and it mostly has, I'd say the biggest benefit is it's got these monthly group calls where you can be in a group call every month with me and other members, and we are basically just talking about how to improve our businesses. So it's got that community element, and it will give you, kind of give you that support that you need as you build your business. It also has some premium lessons in there, and mostly I'm focused on lessons that allow you to boost your business without breaking the bank, right? So I am generally going to be giving you advice that actually could save you money, and oftentimes will save you money. So that's part of the reason I charge for them, because I'm not going to be recommending you use QuickBooks for accounting, right? Because that's going to cost you a lot of money, even though I could get an affiliate commission, which means I could get paid to recommend QuickBooks to you. But I'm going to recommend what I actually use, which is Wave, which is, in my opinion, the best option for a cottage food business. So that's an example of what I mean when I say these lessons are designed to save you money. So that's what Cottage Food Pro is, and as I said, it's so super new and is only $5 a month right now. And that is a price that if you buy, it'll never go up for you. You'll always be grandfathered into that price, and you also can cancel anytime. Things change. If you want to cancel it, you don't even have to ask me. Like, you can go into your account and downgrade your membership automatically. So that's what Cottage Food Pro is. And so I do have a special offer for you, but wait, there's more. Like, that's what all those infomercials always say, right? So normally I charge $50 for a 30-minute private consult. But today I'm going to be offering you one 30-minute consult with me for free. Now, I guess it's not 100% free, because there is a catch, which is that, well, for one, you have to be here live right now to be able to take advantage of this special offer. But two, you have to sign up for Cottage Food Pro right now. So as I said, it's only $5 to sign up for Cottage Food Pro. You'll get all the benefits of Cottage Food Pro. You'll be in our next monthly group call, and you'll be able to watch as many lessons as you want in there. And you'll also be able to get this free consult with me. We can talk about your business, get very personalized feedback about where you are in your next steps, and you can schedule that with me anytime. So that's what your membership will include. If you buy Cottage Food Pro right now. So let's see, what's 11:45 my time. So we'll say by 12:30 Pacific time, or well, actually, I don't know how long the Q&A is going to go. So we'll say by 1 p.m. Pacific time here on October 23rd, or what is that, 4 p.m. Eastern time. That'll be the deadline, the cutoff for anyone who buys Cottage Food Pro and joins the membership within the next hour or so. You will automatically get that free consult with me. And if you purchase it really recently, signed up for the workshop, already purchased Cottage Food Pro, just let me know right now in the comments that you're here and you'd like to take advantage of that free consult. Okay, so let's move on to the question and answer. Definitely I'm here staying on as long as you would like. So let me know if you have any questions. I'll go back in the chat and see if we already have some questions, and try to see if you can stump me here. I like tough questions. So let's see. Oh, I want to start, but there's so many people starting a cottage bakery in our area. Amanda, I just want to say, very rarely is that a major problem. And you know what? I bet a lot of the people starting a cottage food bakery are not following the steps I talked to you about today, and are, probably not doing as much with their business as they could. I would still definitely recommend and encourage you to start. That's just, that's the imposter syndrome. We feel like we are not enough. We are not enough. And the reality is that people will follow you and buy from you just because they want to buy from you, right? And you're unique, and what you are offering is unique and different. So definitely don't let that hold you back. All right. Let's see. Okay. My state seems so restricted. Okay, Mitzi, let me know where you live. But yeah, there are some states that are still restricted, very restricted. Those are changing. I mean, we made a lot of progress over the last 15 years, and it is actually pretty amazing what some states allow now. There's still a few that we need to work on. Nevada was really bad, and they changed their law this year, so it's changing. But, Mitzi, just let me know, what state are you in and what would you like to sell? Okay. Let's see. Messages about what people are selling. How about if the business with a commercial kitchen wants the product? Okay, so Inez, you said that you are, by the way, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. You said that you want to sell frozen sandwiches, and what if the business with a commercial kitchen wants the product? All right, so if you produce again, I don't know where you live, but so in some states that would be legal to do, but most states it's not going to be legal. I assume the sandwiches you want to sell have meat in them. So if they want if they want to buy the product from you, that would be illegal to do from a home kitchen. What I would recommend in that point, if you're not wanting to, well, there's a few ideas, but if you're not wanting to change what you sell, and kind of learn some of the business stuff, and then I would personally recommend partnering with the kitchen and working under them. So you could produce the product in their kitchen, and then I would actually maybe not even work for them, but you could, if they really want the product and they have the commercial kitchen, at that point it might not be it'd probably be a good idea at that point to get a commercial license. Now, I usually don't recommend that, But we're talking about a situation where you already have guaranteed sales for the most part, right? Now, nothing's guaranteed in business, but you have someone ready to buy and buy consistently from you. And so in that case, I might look into just going the commercial route from the get-go, using their kitchen, and hopefully they'd let you use it for free, and using that to start your business. All right, so let's see. Do the products have to be compliant with the state cottage industry laws? I think I covered that in the workshop, but yes, eventually, they do need to be compliant. I said I would be okay starting this launch process without being fully compliant, but at some point, not being compliant is going to limit your growth. Now, I say that, the reality is that a lot of people do operate illegal businesses. I'm sure you've seen them. It's bothersome to a lot of people. There's nothing you're going to do to change that. There's always been illegal businesses. There always will be. But at some point that will limit your business, right? So if you are selling something illegally, you maybe could do that for a while from your home direct to customers. But as soon as you want to expand into markets or events or wholesale, then you're not going to be able to continue without upgrading your business to a commercial license. So I generally recommend, I think doing the right thing, following the laws. And again, the most important thing are the business skills you'll learn from building a cottage food business, right? At some point, you can add on a commercial kitchen, you can add on those other products, but products don't make a business successful, right? It's the entrepreneur and the approach that the entrepreneur takes that makes a business successful, I believe. Okay. Let's see. Would that be like selling at a farmer's market? I don't know what you're referring to there. Does product need to be labeled at launch? I'm going to say no. It's not hard to label things at launch. Generally speaking, the labels could literally be a sheet of paper that you hand to customers. But again, okay, I would say for the pre-launch, definitely no labeling. For the launch process, if you have time for it, again, we're setting a deadline and then working our way through and figuring out what we can accomplish before the deadline happens, right? So if you have time to add labels to the mix, that's fine. Is it that big of a deal if you don't have labels at that point? I don't think it's that big of a deal at that point. Again, probably we're just selling non-perishable foods that are allowed under the cottage food law. And, this is just a very small test phase of your business. As you grow, that can come later. So I would say don't let it hold you back, but if you have time for it, great. Okay, do most cottage food sellers have a separate accountant from their family accountant? I don't know what most do. I would say most don't, is my opinion. Also, my opinion is that you shouldn't. Now, I say that. I've had people on the podcast that say, you got to get an accountant. But it's honestly not that hard to do your accounting, especially if you set things up as a sole proprietorship, which is what I recommend, as opposed to setting up an LLC. Accounting's not that hard to do. It's just an extra schedule on your tax form. You can still expense things the same way you would expense an LLC. And I personally like using Wave, which simplifies things, although you don't have to. You definitely could just use spreadsheets. And I personally, I run all of my sales through Square. And then I keep all of my expenses on a separate credit card. Not even a business credit card, but just an old credit card is what I've used to have all of my business expenses be separated. So at the end of the year, you have all the reports from the credit card company of what you spent. You've got all the reports from Square of what you've earned. And that's ultimately mostly what you need to do your taxes. So it's it's something I don't touch that much until tax time. But as your business grows, it's something you'll need to touch more often. And then as it really grows, maybe at that point, it would make sense to get an accountant, especially if you're not a numbers person. But I wouldn't recommend starting with it. All right, so very helpful. Thanks, Jennifer. Most valuable things. Awesome. So hosting a pre-launch and the main launch. Oh, those comments just jumped. Donna's confirming, don't do the distractions. Yes, Donna, you're awesome. Let's see. In-home launch is your favorite thing. For most of those you selling now, do you have to collect and pay sales tax to your state? So, Betsy, that is a tricky question. And generally speaking, usually when we talk about cottage food products, we're talking about non-perishable foods, shelf-stable foods, pre-packaged foods. Typically, you don't have to pay state sales tax for any of those things. But that can be a little bit tricky because, and by the way, I should switch over here. All right, full screen. That can be a little bit tricky because even though you might not have to pay sales tax to your state, you still might have to pay sales tax to your county or your town. So it's very dependent on where you live. So I would never tell someone you don't need to pay sales tax, but I will say a lot of people don't. And it's hard to figure this information out too, because even if you talk to the tax office or whatever in your state, sometimes even they won't know what to do with a unique business like yours. So what I normally like to do is I like to go to a market and maybe find another cottage food business in my area and see what they've learned, see what they do. Try to learn from others because, again, it's very specific to your area and other people have already learned some of that stuff. So I would say I'd add on, it's not something you have to be super worried about at first. You're not going to be like fined massively for tax evasion or something like that, so it's something you need to figure out at some point, but generally speaking, a lot of people don't have to pay sales tax. Okay, all about the pre-launch, effects building customer base. Thank you so much. Susan said, understand the distractions aren't that important, just to focus on making my product special. Awesome. Yeah, and Donna's confirming she doesn't pay sales tax. And Susan's saying she does. Okay. Mab, sorry I missed that. I'm sure you're not the only one that I missed. Know how to pronounce it. Oh, Mab, I didn't skip your name because it's hard to pronounce. I'm sure I just missed it. But I would also add, wait, where was it? No, I did read your comment earlier. I just was kind of focusing on the comments where I, wanted to address some concerns, and you didn't express any concern in your comment earlier. But I also want to express this concern that your name, I think I read that right, that your name could hold you back. And I can't think of any specific examples right now, but I am almost certainly that your name is not going to hold you back at all. And more generally speaking, I would just comment about business names, because people get really caught up about business names and think that their business name is going to be the difference between having a business that grows exponentially versus doesn't. And again, almost never does a business name matter at all. I was just thinking recently about my guests, Nathan and Nicole. They were on the show a long time ago. They have a super successful business. I was thinking about them specifically because they started in this like pre-launch way. Like they hosted an event at their house. It was super popular. A bunch of lines were forming. And then they grew it from there, and then they started doing markets, and now they have an actual brick and mortar space in their town selling salsa. I thought about them because I can't remember what their business name is, which, again, exactly the point. It's not memorable, but it's something like Parchman Family Foods. It's something like that. And that's been their business name this whole entire time, and it has not slowed them down at all. And then also sometimes people change the name, and it's not that hard to change a name. So that's a big part of the reason why I tell people it is a distraction, because a lot of people, myself, I'm guilty of this. My first business, oh my gosh, I spent days, weeks trying to figure out the very best business name. So I think, Mab, your comments about your own personal name, but it applies to pretty much everybody who's thinking that their name is going to make or break the difference, would be make or break their business. All right. Okay, I would like to sign up for Pro, but I don't know where to link the payment. All right, so I did mean to do that. If we go back here, there's cottagefoodpro.com. And if I go back to the browser here, cottagefoodpro.com will take you to the Pro page. I should have done this earlier. It'll take you to this page, Cottage Food Pro, and you can click either one of these buttons, start your journey, and then you can just scroll down and add your credit card info here, agree to the terms, and submit. And well, okay, I'm logged in here, but there'll be other fields here to sign up as a new user as well. And yeah, so you just have to fill out those fields. But that is how you pay. So Pamela, let me know if you're still having trouble. Okay, so I would like to sell cakes, but frosting isn't allowed. Okay, so you're in a very unique state. There are a couple states out there to only allow a water-based glaze. So what I'd recommend for you, Mitzi, because using a water-based glaze is obviously not ideal, I would recommend buying your frosting. So buy a commercially made shelf-stable frosting that doesn't have any dairy in it. Is it as good as buttercream? No, but it'll definitely work to get you off the ground and make you legal. And I'm trying to think if there's, I went in depth about this with one of my podcast guests. I want to say like 40 episodes ago. Anyway, we talked about this, and she literally has built her entire business based on Sam's Club frosting. So, so yes, that is probably the best solution, but most people don't live in a state that is that restricted. During the free launch, should they be compliant? All right, so Linda, I think what you're asking is, I'm always compliant with laws when selling. Should pre-launch be compliant? All right, so the pre-launch process is you're not selling. All right, if I'm saying if people want to try to buy from you on the spot and ask to buy from you, I wouldn't say no to that, but you're not actually selling during the pre-launch phase. It's the launch phase where you are selling and intentionally selling. And what I mentioned there in the workshop is I would recommend not worrying too much about the laws at that point. You know, it's a one-time thing. There are a lot of people out there that sell illegally for years upon years. A lot of people don't even know they're selling illegally. Some people know and they keep doing it. For a launch event, I think that the upsides of being compliant are outweighed by the downsides, which is it slows you down, and you also might have to change things as you learn more about what's going to work in your business. The point of the launch process is to validate your business, and we want to make sure that this is a really promising idea that has good potential before we put all of our eggs into one basket. Okay. Can you report the cash payments through Square? Yes, you absolutely can. It's KME. Anyway, yes, you can. Within the app, there is a way to just say, this was paid with cash or this was paid with check. And so, like I said, I do report all sales through Square. Everything is there. Nina's saying PowerPoint's credible. Thank you. Oh, I skipped a couple here. Let's see. What would be the time frame between the pre-launch and the official launch? Obviously, it's going to be different for everyone, Amanda, but I personally would be looking at about a week. The pre-launch and the launch are completely different events. Most people are not going to know about your pre-launch event, just your family and friends. It could be 2 weeks, and you also just have to look at your own personal schedule to see when you can make time for it. But I would be trying to set that deadline for a week or two away, and then just try to do everything you need to do to prepare for it within that time. There should be enough time to do everything. Again, we're keeping everything really simple at this point. So yeah, I mean, we're not overcomplicating it, right? There's not too many things to do for getting prepared for the pre-launch. And then the launch adds a few more things, but again, not too many. And then once you get past the launch, then, there's a few more things that you'll be adding on. So we're incrementally growing our business. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything up here. Okay. Accounts payable, accounts receivable. Would it be possible to launch before the holidays coming up? And actually, that is something, Amanda, that I meant to mention in the workshop and I forgot. But this is a great time. In fact, this is probably the best time for most people to be launching their food businesses. A lot of my podcast guests see a spike during the holidays. Some of them get, one of them fairly recently, they get like at least half of their business comes in Q4. So I know it was someone who sells candies or Bluebird confections. She was on, maybe 5 episodes ago, but I think she said like 50% of her sales come in Q4. So this is one of the very best times to launch. It's when I personally launched my fudge business, which is partly because fudge only sells during the holidays anyway. But not only is it possible to launch, it would be highly recommended to try to set up your launch for the end of the year. You're going to want to avoid holidays. You're going to want to avoid putting it on Thanksgiving week. But, I could see where you would be doing, and, obviously Halloween's not a great time to launch a candy business, for instance. So you have to think about different things. But, you could, in the first week of November, do your pre-launch, and then, maybe in a couple weeks later in November, do your launch the week before Thanksgiving. So that could be a really good time, especially if you're selling anything like pies or pastries or baked goods or anything like that. Selling something that is seasonally specific, pumpkin spice bread, it's gonna be a good idea for your business. That's for sure. Definitely keep things separate. Yeah, I mean, I personally keep things separate in terms of, tracking everything in separate accounts. I mean, that's honestly something that has evolved over time in my business. When I first started my business, I was using my personal expenses to buy. And again, in the very beginning, not that big of a deal to do. So these are good things to do eventually, but you don't want to get super hung up on having everything absolutely perfect before you move forward. You'll figure it out. And I guarantee you, there's a lot of people that have built very successful businesses and they did not have everything set up perfectly from the beginning. Okay. Biggest distraction is liability insurance. What are your recommendations for that? So my recommendations for liability insurance, definitely a little bit unconventional, and I'll explain my reasoning. Generally speaking, I don't recommend people get liability insurance, which might sound surprising. It's also kind of uncomfortable for a lot of people to think about not protecting their business with liability insurance, because we protect everything else, right? We protect our house, we protect our car, we protect, there's a lot of different things. We protect our life sometimes with insurance. But the reason I don't recommend getting liability insurance is just because there's almost no chance that you're going to need it. Generally speaking, when we're talking about a cottage food business, we're talking about a non-perishable food product. I've talked with health officials who tell me there's no good reason to be regulating these types of foods because they don't carry any food safety risk, or not any real significant one. So the likelihood of your non-perishable foods making people sick, the likelihood of it causing people to come after you or leading to an insurance claim is basically zero. It's so small that in the last 14 years of doing this, not only have never heard of anyone that needed to use liability insurance to call a claim, but I also specifically talked to Flip, who is the number one insurer of cottage food businesses. The Flip program's like $300 a year. It's the easiest way to get insurance for your business. I asked them, like, do you have any examples of a cottage food business that has actually called a claim? And they couldn't give me one. So that was granted a few years ago, but so that's one thing. Now, there might be times where you have to get insurance, right? So a lot of markets will require it. They require all their vendors, including commercial vendors that are selling perishable products, right? Things that have more risk to them. They require all their vendors to get insurance. So if you want to join that market, you'll have to get insurance. Also, if you're wholesaling your product, the store will probably require you to be insured before they can put your product on their store shelves. So there are times where it's required, and if it's required, then yeah, absolutely get it. That's a business expense in order to grow your business. But and also I should say, a lot of lawyers, for instance, would just tell you the most low risk thing to say, which is, oh yeah, get insurance, because they, if anything goes wrong, like, they're not going to be held accountable for that, right? But, I'm an entrepreneur. I look at the cost benefit analysis. What's the cost of insurance, right? The cost is obviously the cost of the insurance. It could be hundreds of dollars a year, and also the cost of your time of having to set it up and manage it. So that's the cost. What are the benefits? And honestly, the benefits are just pretty much peace of mind. I don't see any actual benefit in it actually helping protect your business. So I wouldn't say that's a business. Like, it's not actually going to be beneficial in protecting your finances or assets in any way, but it can feel uncomfortable to have something that doesn't have insurance because we're so used to having insurance on things. So some people, just for the peace of mind, just for the comfort of knowing you have it, it could be worth $300 a year to have it. So that is a legitimate reason to have it. And if you feel like you need it, then that's fine. But I want to make sure people understand that the products are very safe. Your business is very small. No one's going to sue you. No one's going to come after you. I don't have any examples of that ever happening. And you have to understand that this business holds almost no liability on its own. And so insurance is just not needed. That's my opinion. Anyway, you can blast me in the comments for for that. Okay, let's get through this. Again, I will stay on as long as you have questions, so feel free to ask whatever you want. And I hope I am not missing anything here. Can I include teaching cupcake decorating at birthday parties as part of my cottage food business, or is it still strictly limited to product sales? Okay, well, first of all, Monica, you can teach cupcake decorating. There should be no problem with teaching it. Is it part of your cottage food business? I mean, I'm not going to say I'm the absolute expert in this field because I do focus on cottage food sale businesses and I don't focus on educational food businesses. But there are a lot of cottage food businesses that do host decorating classes and stuff. And from what I know, there is nothing wrong with teaching people how to do something on their own. So typically the question here would be, can I teach a class that teaches something that's not allowed under the cottage food realm? And even in that case, I'm inclined to say yes. Now, I'm not going to say, oh, I 100% no, because again, it can come down to local requirements. But just in the same way that, you wouldn't know this, but generally speaking, if you wanted to be a home chef, if you wanted to go into someone else's home and cook for them, there'd be less hoops that you need to jump through than the hoops that you need to jump through to start a cottage food business, even selling non-perishable packaged foods. So, for that reason, generally speaking, it is going to be easier to host a decorating class, and there's probably not going to be regulation. It's also going to be really hard to regulate that kind of business. So at the end of the day, I'd say you should teach the classes. You absolutely can and should. And the likelihood of there being any permit or anything you need to teach that is pretty low, but I can't say 100% sure that it's zero. All right, so that's my answer for that. So you can track cash. How about the food handler license? Is that recommended? Okay, so a food handler license would be, in some states, it's required to take a food safety training class. And this is a basic food handler course. Is going to be about a 2-hour long course. You can take it online. If you use my recommendation, which you could find on my resources page on Forager, that's going to be only like $10. If you use something like ServeSafe, it's going to be more like whatever they charge, $18 or something. It's not an expensive cost. There is food manager training, which is much more extensive and much more expensive. It's like $100. But most states, if they're going to require training, they're just going to require the food handler course. And I will say, even if your state doesn't require food handler training, it's not a bad idea to do it anyway. I wouldn't do it right at the beginning, but as your business is growing, I would recommend taking a basic food handler training course. At the very least, even if it's stuff you already know, it's a good refresher. And it might also have stuff that you don't know. It's something that every person working in a restaurant or a food service establishment has to take in order to be working there. And since you are preparing food for other people and selling it, it's a pretty good idea, in my opinion, to take it. Again, it only takes a couple hours of your time. It's only going to cost about $10 in most states. And, it's a very easy way to just give yourself basic food safety education. So yes, I'd recommend that. And I guess I should show you, let's see. If you go to learn here and go to resources, down here is 360 training. So learn to serves course. And then I would select, say, California. And then, and so, yeah, it's normally $10, but I guess it's discounted to $7.50 in California. So, so that's really quickly how you would do that. All right. So let's see. Okay. Can you receive payments through Zelle for the business and not have issues with taxes? How you receive payment is not generally going to be a tax problem. What would be a tax problem is if your state didn't allow online forms of payment. But I don't even know if there's any that have that restriction anymore. There used to be a few that said you could not transact through Venmo or whatever. Generally speaking, if there's a restriction there, it's going to be an in-person restriction. So they're going to want to have that payment taken in person. There are some states that require that. Most states don't really care if you're using Venmo or if you're using Zelle. Doesn't really matter how you get paid. And then certainly, I don't know of any tax implications there that would change anything, whether you're taking payments through Zelle versus a credit card. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers that question. So register your business is different from having an LLC, right? Okay, so there's a few elements of permitting. I do talk about that a little bit more in the Cottage Food Pro membership. I have a course about that, but there's kind of three things going on here. Well, really maybe two things. There's there could be a lot of things, but there's like permitting from or registration, which could happen through your ag or health department. So that would be if your ag or health department requires it, you might have to get permitted and approved by them, licensed by them, get a registration number, get a permit number, whatever it may be in your state. That is part of the equation. The other part is the actual business formation. And so this would be a basic business license. So the most basic form would be a sole proprietorship. It also could be a partnership. And then that would be just something that happens through your county office. Typically it would happen through your county office, and you would be maybe just operating under your own name as the sole proprietorship, or operating under a DBA, which means doing business as. So you'd be picking a business name and operating under that instead of your own personal name. In these cases, basically how you form your business is going to just determine how things get taxed in some way. So the permitting through the Ag and Health Department is one side of the equation. There's no real choices there. The business formation, you have a choice as to whether you're going to set up a sole proprietorship or partnership if you have more than one person starting the business, or if you want to get an LLC, or not recommended, a corporation like an S Corp or a C Corp. Definitely did not recommend that for a cottage food business. So that's a question like, should I get an LLC? Should you form an LLC? And a lot of people, again, this is unconventional advice, but I'm giving my honest opinion because I want people to be informed. Most of the time, people will get an LLC because they want to protect their personal assets from liability, right? So the main concern here would be that you could get sued if something went terribly wrong in your business. Someone could come after you because of things that happen in the business, and then they could come after your personal assets. They could come after your house. They could come after your bank accounts, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the concern, and that's what often leads people to pursue an LLC. Unlike the corporation side of it, an LLC is not a corporation. It's a limited liability company. Unlike corporations like an S Corp or a C Corp, an LLC doesn't have any real tax benefits to them. So that's called pass-through taxation. An LLC is going to pass the business taxes on down through to the owner's personal tax forms. So it doesn't have any tax implications. So the main reason to get an LLC would just be for your own personal liability protection. The reason why it's a little bit complicated is because if you really dig into what is actually allowing an LLC to protect, or what an LLC actually protects, generally speaking, as far as I understand it, an LLC most protects a business when they have employees that do something wrong, right? So then that employee's mistake, again, we're talking about all kinds of businesses here, so probably a business that's carries significantly more risk than a cottage food business. Again, cottage food businesses carry virtually zero risk. I've never heard of a major problem with a cottage food business. So again, but there are a lot of businesses out there that do carry significant risk, right? So like, let's say somebody's employee actually did something that was intentional and caused someone else harm, and they went to try to get reparations or repayment for that, went to the court, through the court process, sued them. If it wasn't an LLC, they could go to the owner and try to wipe out the owner's accounts. Again, we're talking about extremely unlikely here, right? But theoretically, it could happen. So an LLC is designed to protect from that, right? Say, okay, this is an LLC. All of your business activity has to be operated separately from personal. So you have to have ideally a separate bank account, or at least a separate credit card where you're paying for things. You have to have all your accounts and records kept separate. And like, that's what makes it LLC. It's a separate entity. It's its own entity. And so, some employee does something wrong, they come after it, and the court's going to say, well, this all happened under the LLC, so you can wipe out the LLC's assets, but you can't come after the owner's assets, okay? That's the appeal of the LLC. Where it gets tricky is, what if the owner is the one who does something wrong, right? At that point, the court might not say that the liability is only limited to the company, right? They'd say this owner, the person in charge, was the one who caused the problem, so they are personally liable for what they did. And in most cases, a cottage food business is a single owned entity, right? So it's just you operating your business. And that's why, generally speaking, I don't recommend people to get an LLC. For one, the likelihood of you ever having any kind of problem with such a small business is virtually zero. And then for two, even if there was something drastically wrong, that LLC might not protect you because it would be you that caused the problem, right? So for most people, I'd say LLC is not worth it until you get to a certain point. I will say, once you start growing, you're passing $50,000 of sales, you're passing $100,000 of sales. At a certain point, it's like, okay, well, an LLC might make sense. And then also, if you're selling products that are inherently more risky, if you're selling perishable products, if you're selling frozen sandwiches, like Ina said, okay, yeah, at that point, you could actually have more of a legitimate problem. And then especially once you start to add employees, then an LLC really starts to make sense. All right, so yeah, I think that's enough about the LLC thing. Yeah, you can get me talking about that a lot. Okay, let me just make sure. Let's see. Okay, so Betsy says she signed up for Pro, but is looking for the activation email. So usually that comes right away. But Betsy, you can always just message me. You can either use the contact form on Forger. If you scroll down to the footer, there's a contact form, or you can message me at david@forger.com. And if you're having trouble activating, I can activate that automatically. So okay. I had a health accounting department tell me that decorating classes didn't fall under cottage food laws because the instruction is what you're selling, not the food item used for the instruction. So MJ, yeah, that's what I'm saying, is it's not really part of your business. Recommend certification, food safety card. Yeah. Venus, get the food handler. Great thing to have. Free activation came through. Betsy, okay, good to go. Glad you got activated. Sole proprietorship still leaves personal risk. And so, Inez, that's what I'm saying, is that the LLC also carries personal risk, even if people don't realize it. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about the LLC is that in some states, it's really easy to get an LLC, and it's not often, but sometimes free to get an LLC. So if that's the case, it takes a couple hours of your time. It's no big deal. I live in California where, setting up an LLC not only is more complicated and maybe they've improved this now, but last I checked, it required like you had to mail something in and wait weeks for it to be approved. But the real kicker is that California charges $800 franchise tax per year to have an LLC. So just even that expense alone could be a risk to a business. Like the whole point of an LLC is to mitigate risk, but there is financial risk associated with an LLC in some cases. So I know a number of people that have regretted having LLCs, especially in California. So that was another thing I wanted to say about that. Okay. Yeah, and if you get an LLC, it's fine. I'm not saying it's bad to get an LLC. Just want to make sure people know it's not necessary. I think that is all of the questions that I have. I can stay on a couple more minutes or another minute or two just to make sure we don't have anyone else. But thank you so much for joining this workshop. I hope you join me in the Cottage Food Pro membership. Again, we've got we've got 30 minutes left to get that free consultation with me. And so by 1 o'clock Pacific time, make sure you get that join. We are going to be doing I think it's November 13th is when we're going to be doing our next group call in the membership. And, I hope to see you there too. If you haven't listened to the podcast, I'd absolutely recommend it. So, forager.com/podcast. There are over 150 episodes now, so many amazing stories. So I definitely encourage you to follow me there, and also leave me a review if you've been enjoying the podcast. Those reviews are very invaluable. And then also, like I mentioned, I have my free mini course, which is something I created a few years ago, and it gives you some more information, different strategies about how to start a business. And at the end of that is a giveaway launch, which I mentioned in this workshop, but that's a good strategy to use to get a business off the ground. Some local chain. So I'm just want to make sure that I'm seeing all of the comments here, because it seems like Inez is responding to a comment that I don't see. Wait a second. Oh, maybe I had to change something. Okay, I hope I didn't miss anyone, because I did have top messages. It's actually been over 4 years since I have done a workshop like this. So I'm still working out the kinks. And you know what I did when I decided to do this? I picked the date first, and then I figured out what I wanted to do for the workshop. So I am doing the same thing that I recommended in this workshop. Okay, I just noticed that Inez mentioned a comment about Chamber of Commerce don't allow businesses to become a member. I've never heard of that. It's definitely possible that a chamber wouldn't allow a cottage food business. Usually it's like a market that wouldn't allow a cottage food business, which they can do. Never heard of a chamber turning down money though for a business. I think what Inez might be saying is that you can't be in the chamber if you're not an LLC. And again, I haven't heard that one before, because a sole proprietorship is definitely a business if you have a business license. So I'm not sure exactly what that was referring to, Inez, but love the class. Thank you. AME Kim, not sure what if that's an abbreviation or not. Thank you. Thanks, Donna. Can we talk about November 20th soon? I think, a couple things would either be, if you're referring to the group call that we're doing, I think it's on November 13th. within the pro membership, or maybe you already signed up and you want to do a consult on the 20th. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to there, Inez, but just message me. We can talk about it offline. And then thanks for the information. Thanks, Karen. LA. Yeah, LA's not sure about the November 20th date. Thanks, Inez. Thank you for sharing. Great. Thanks, Linda. Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. And as I said, I hope you join me in Cottage Food Pro. And if you sign up for, well, you're already signed up for my newsletter, so you'll be able to hear from me and every week. And thanks so much for being here.